Who are the top 5 transfers Michigan State has picked up this offseason? Also, do we need to slow down on the Aidan Chiles hype just a little bit? And then, can Michigan State make the gauntlet in October a little sweaty for their opponents? Let's find out.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white. 3 days a week in June and July. Sometimes we'll have, 4 episodes in a week should the news cycle deserve it. But yes, just for the next 2 months, guys, we're slowing down a little bit, making these shows more quality, not quantity. But yeah, once August comes up, which will probably seem like just in 16 minutes with how fast the world goes these days, it will be back to 5 days a week. Also, I'll address the elephant in the room for all the YouTube viewers. I am coming to you live from the greatest basement, from the greatest in-laws of all time, because, well, at our house, we're having some work done. Today's demolition day, so instead of a sledgehammer obliterating your eardrums, it'll just be my voice obliterating your eardrums. So yes, if this looks different on YouTube, this is why. If you're listening on podcast, your life's probably not impacted whatsoever, but just had to address why it looks like I'm being held hostage inside of a little toy warehouse right now with everything behind me. All right, let's get into the show here. And before the weekend started, Jonathan Smith, he was at the Sound Mind, Sound Body camp over at Wayne State. That is where some of the top prospects in the area go to show off their stuff, land some scholarship offers, network with the coaches. Anyway, it's a big high schooling event. Jonathan Smith, after speaking to the students there, spoke to the media, and he hinted at we might have one more addition to the roster this offseason out of the portal. So he wasn't definitive. He didn't say for sure, but the question was, is the roster set? He said there could be another addition. Now, from what I hear, that's looking to be in the wide receiver room. So there's a little nugget right there. Should that be, what we're hearing, everything's accurate in that front. So that's where we're looking at. It won't be an offensive lineman, even though, of course, we think they could use some help there. Just doesn't look like that there's too much. I don't want to say that would just be really mean if I said there's no talent in the offensive line room whatsoever that Michigan State needs. It's just not what they're looking for, it sounds like. So it could be a receiver. But regardless, before, if, or when that happens, we'll see. A lot of things going on with transfer credits and classes and all that fun stuff that we've learned with some, former commits, guys like Tony Grimes, TJ Sheffield, where the transfer credits actually didn't roll over for Michigan State. Nevertheless, let's look at what Michigan State does have right now. Let's look at the top 5 transfer portal pickups for this offseason. We just did top pickups just for the spring cycle, but let's open this all up to the entire offseason. And there's no shortage of honorable mention guys, which we will get to after we roll through these top 5 guys. Number 5, we're going to start on the defensive side of the ball here. D'Quan Douse, defensive tackle out of Georgia Tech. This was one of the early pickups for Jonathan Smith. And this was a nice pickup even before Derek Harmon and Simeon Barrow left the program. This is a guy you're thinking, okay, first defensive tackle off the bench, could be getting the same production as those other 2 guys. But now, of course, with the departure of Derek Harmon to Oregon, and now with the departure of Simeon Barrow from Michigan State to Miami, which he might be leaving that school too. So that's real solid stability going on over there. Regardless, you're actually going to get a lot more production out of D'Quan Douse. And this is the number 13 defensive tackle in the ACC last year per Pro Football Focus. So if you're one of those people out there that hold a lot of what Pro Football Focus has to say as gospel, well, then you're going to like this pickup here. Strong at stopping the run. Of course, that's what you want out of a defensive tackle, but he's a big game player. Last year, the Yellow Jackets, they faced 3 teams in the top 20. They faced UNC, they faced Ole Miss, and they faced Georgia when they were inside the top 20. He had 6 plus tackles in all of those games. Those were his 3 best games last year, was against the stiffest competition. So there you have it with D'Quan Douse. As we go to number 4, We're going to go with the interior offensive line now. Tanner Miller out of Oregon State, 6'2", 300-pound center. My man is built like a cube out there, and he is solid, if not really good, in run blocking here now. Pro Football Focus, PFF, they gave him an 80.3 run blocking grade. That is third best amongst all Power 5 interior offensive linemen, or I guess we should say Power 4 interior offensive linemen. And actually today, on Monday morning, Pro Football Focus, they dropped their top returning interior offensive lineman to the Big Ten. And yes, they did count Tanner Miller as returning, just returning to college, not the conference they played in last year. He is the number one returning interior offensive lineman, again, per Pro Football Focus. So if you hold a lot of weight in what those ball knowers over there have to say, yeah, Tanner Miller's obviously a good guy to get out of the transfer portal. Now, it won't seem like that with this staff, obviously, because the offensive coordinator, the offensive line coach, and the head coach are all the same. He just took them all from Corvallis. Yeah, you're going to appreciate that. Now, number 3, back to the defensive side of the ball here, Wayne Matthews. This is a guy that we have been sky high on out of Old Dominion, the linebacker, because you know what? Obviously a strong player for the Monarchs, but I would be lying to you if I said that the last few years of watching Michigan State kind of, left me scarred, a little jaded, because there's been a lot of issues with the defense, right? That's no secret. They could really use some pass rush, okay? That's not what Wayne Matthews brings. They could really use some secondary help. Okay, Wayne Matthews is a linebacker. That's not necessarily what they need, but another glaring issue with Michigan State the last few years, guys, is linebackers have been exploited to oblivion in pass coverage. So what do you do if you're Jonathan Smith? Even before you see your team practice in the spring, just on film, you identify that is a massive issue, and you go out and you get Wayne Matthews, 88.9 in pass coverage. That is 10th best amongst all linebackers, not just group of 5 linebackers where Wayne Matthews was playing the last few years. We're talking all FBS level linebackers. Wayne Matthews comes here with 2 years of eligibility, so that's a nice little cherry on top. You're not just going to get upgraded pass coverage of the linebacker position this year, but also next year too. That is a big pickup. Now, number 2, as far as portal pickups go, this is one that was recent. All right, this is Ed Woods out of Arizona State. Projected starter for the Sun Devils this year. One of the best cornerbacks in the Pac-12 last year. Actually, again, Pro Football Focus had him as the 7th best corner in the Pac-12 last season. So, guys, this is a room that desperately needed help. I know that it all didn't come down to the cornerbacks, why Michigan State was ranked last in basically every single pass defense metric in the Big Ten the last few years. Of course, some of it has to do with pass rush, but let's not let the corners clean off scot-free blindly. No. They could use some help. Going into this offseason, it was Chance Rucker, solid, true sophomore corner that you feel okay about, and then Chuck Brantley. And even after that, the depth fell off a cliff. This isn't just depth. This is instant starting cornerback help right now from Ed Woods. Beat out Alabama for his commitment. And no, this wasn't just Alabama had him on campus, decided they didn't want him. That was a legitimate transfer portal win against Alabama. So this guy is talented. He has instant impact in a position that is of dire need for Michigan State. As we go down to number 1, we're not going to do hot takes. We're not going to shock anyone. It's Aidan Chiles. It's the guy that 24/7 Sports had rated as their number 1 transfer quarterback. It's the guy that Jonathan Smith recruited early on that Brian Lindgren is already familiar with. And that is the best part about this transfer quarterback. It's not learning a new system in one offseason. The system's already ingrained in him. He's a dual threat, a quarterback that Michigan State, talent-wise, has not had on campus in quite some time, if not ever. So yes, number 1 is obviously Aidan Chiles. Now, honorable mention, no shortage here. You got Jack Valling, your tight end, right, guys? I mean, he could very well be a top 5 transfer guy for Michigan State. The offensive staff just does such a great job scheming these guys open. We talked about this not too long ago with Al Carson, just what they do in the play action game with tight ends. It's going to be a really big year for Jack Valling. Jalen Satchel, another guy out of Old Dominion. Ben Roberts, big worm, just like Jalen Satchel, another defensive tackle. And, well, It's definitely a lot of snaps to be had at defensive tackle now with those two big departures this offseason. Nikai Martinez, a guy that started every game for University of Central Florida last year. He could play everywhere. Cornerback, nickel, safety. That's a massive pickup for Michigan State too. Legend Cavazzo's an experienced cornerback from North Carolina. And also, we're leaving off Luke Newman, FCS All-American out of Holy Cross. He's going to play a big role in this offensive line too. So, guys, if you think any of those should have been in the top 5 or any other name I'm missing, comment below on YouTube or reach out to us, lockedonspartans@gmail.com. All right, we're going to talk more about Aidan Chiles and, well, what are some player comps? Are we putting a little too much dip on the chip and playing him more? But still, guys, LinkedIn Jobs is the place to go for all you small business owners out there. And if you're hiring for your small business, look, LinkedIn knows that you are wearing so many hats out there. You might not even have time or the resources to find that quality professional that is right for your role. That's why you got to go check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster. And guys, for my favorite part, for free. That's right. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job, but might be open for the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, just point blank, you're not looking in the right place. Join the 2.5 million small businesses that use LinkedIn for their hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. I'll say that one more time, guys. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. All right, now let's go swimming in the mailbag here. And it has been a little bit since Jerry wrote in this question. Again, guys, Sheehan_sports on Twitter, lockedonspartans@gmail.com if you ever want to reach out. But we are sticking with the Aidan Chiles conversation. This guy has dominated the conversation this offseason with the fan base, with the media. So let's keep it rolling here. What current or former Big Ten quarterback do you compare to Aidan Chiles? And I like that he kept it open to the rest of the Big Ten here because, look, just like we said last segment, this is a skill set that Michigan State has not seen in quite some time here. Both what he could do with his legs efficiently and the big arm. Brian Lewerke had dual threat quarterback tendencies to his game. He could get stuff done with his legs, but I think it will be more prominent with Aidan Chiles and the way Smith and Brian Lindgren run their offense too. So that's why we got to step out. Now for this answer, we're going to give 3 different answers, ranging from his ceiling, like let's say everything goes as well as it possibly could, who can he compare to, down to perhaps a cautionary tale, guys, because, you know, it takes more than just one player and some good coordinators to really blossom to your full potential as a quarterback here. So when I say this first name, I want everyone to listen. I want everyone to understand where I'm coming from. I'm not saying for sure he is going to be this player. Maybe the second name that I give is more of an accurate depiction of what we can expect from his career. And then, of course, a cautionary tale at the end. But here we go. The ceiling. All right. This is if everything goes as well as it possibly could. Okay. Not my absolute prediction for who he turns into. But the ceiling could very well be a JT Barrett. And I know that is a big name. That is high expectations. But guys, like as far as skill set goes, what did you see from JT Barrett as soon as his freshman season? Unfortunately, at Spartan Stadium, got to witness this in person. But he's got a big arm. Like he's got an arm that could drop 50 yards into a bucket. We've seen it on film with Aidan Chiles. He can throw 20-yard line to 20-yard line. That is what you get. That is why Aidan Chiles was ranked as high as he was in 24/7 Sports. Why he was a 4-star coming out of high school, right, guys? But also the legs. Now, I will say this. JT Barrett was running a ton in college. He was running upwards of more than 10 times per game. Fascinated to see with how this offensive staff kind of treats that, especially in his sophomore season coming up where, well, it's going to be a long year coming up. Offensive line depth is a little thin in places. There's going to be a big gauntlet of big physical teams in October. Are they really going to run him 13, 15 times a game against Ohio State, against Oregon? Perhaps we'll have to wait and see. But, I mean, as far as raw skill set goes, it very well could be a JT Barrett. Now, JT had a lot of other great things going for him. Great offensive line, great receivers, solid running back room. And that's what Michigan State has too. So that's also why perhaps I don't see maybe 15 times per game the entire season because Well, Michigan State also does have good running backs in Nate Carter. So, yeah, I mean, that's what you got here. Now, the realistic production here could be more of a Trace McSorley. All right, guys, like, okay, so let's step back from the JT Barrett. You know, he's in the Heisman ballots every single year that he plays. Trace McSorley, maybe another good comparison. By his junior year, he was getting 4,000 yards of all-purpose yards between running and passing. That's a big number to aspire to, 4,000 yards. But with the production, what he'll be asked to do in the RPO game, this could be more of the speed. And also, like, Trace McSorley is a guy that got a few Heisman votes his sophomore year, but never really again his junior or his senior year. Played on some really solid Penn State teams. Maybe that's just what Aidan Chiles is, right, guys? A guy that could get it done with his legs. Really solid in the pass game. Brought Michigan State to some pretty overall solid seasons. That could be it too, but here's the cautionary tale, guys. And this is kind of going to go into our next mailbag question we have right after this. Is there too much hype on this? Should we tone down the expectations a little bit for Aidan Chiles? Because you know who's really gifted? You know who could get stuff done with his legs? You know who was really solid passing the ball? He had a big arm himself too. We're going to take a trip down the highway here. And we're going to go to Michigan because back in the day, Devin Gardner, all right, he was athletically gifted. He had a lot of hype around him. He got sacked 36 times in 2013. You can be a really gifted quarterback, guys, right? But man, if the offense isn't matching up, if the offensive line isn't doing their job, you can be getting lumps on top of bruises, on top of lacerations throughout the entire season where, guys, famously during that 2013 game against Michigan State, it looked like he was being just carried off of the beaches of Normandy. It was just a brutal afternoon for Devin Gardner. Like, that's what it could look like. So a lot goes into strong quarterback play that goes more than just the individual player itself. You need protection. All right, we've said that, you know, the offensive line, the starters, feeling okay about. You know, you've added two good transfer portal pieces in the interior. Now you're asking for a new guy, Christian Phillips, to be that third interior guy, and then Brandon Baldwin, Ashton Lepo. You know what? Like, guys that are maybe, I don't want to say inexperienced because they did get some run last year, but still have a full season to prove themselves what they really could be. But let's say it all works out. That's great. Let's say any of them get hurt, though. The depth behind them does fall off a cliff. It is just Dallas Fincher, the only guy with any experience on that offensive line that is in the two deep. So there you have it. Now let's go to the next question here. Marsh writes in, is it a bad take that we shouldn't go into football season expecting Aidan Chiles to be Jesus? I don't think it's a bad take. I think that is reasonable. All right. I know we've talked a lot about Aidan Chiles. We've gotten very excited about him. We just had an episode not too long ago talking about what records he could break here at Michigan State. That was one of the mailbag questions we got, is what could he do here? And I think we laid it out decently without putting too much expectations on him. The two records that we pointed out were pass touchdowns in a single season, and that is 27 pass touchdowns. We listed that for two reasons. One, because sure, like, Aidan Chiles can be a really good quarterback here. I think especially by his junior year too. Try to make good emphasis on that when we answered that question. Is I don't think any records will fall this year, but maybe next year. Another full year experience under his belt. Michigan State adds more in the portal this offseason. I think things can get clicking by 2025. So it wasn't just his talent, but also the number 27 for pass touchdowns. Like, that's actually one of the lower records at a program. We brought this up too, and I'll try to say the quarterback's name correctly this time, but Russell Wilson over at Wisconsin, ground and pound Wisconsin, he had 32. More times than not, you're going to see a program record somewhere in the 30s. So for Michigan State just to be at 27, which is what Peyton Thor did in 2021, it's on the lower end of records as far as, you know, national programs go. The other record, 3,200 all-purpose yards, okay? Between the passing, between the running, between his dual threat quarterback efficiencies, guys, 3,200 yards in a single season isn't out of this world possible. Like, and again, that's a Peyton Thorne record that he set, but if you're asking for 2,500 passing yards, 700 yards on the legs, I think that's doable in his junior year. So, should we expect him to be Jesus? No, guys, because Aidan Chiles, He can't play defensive tackle. All right, he can't play offensive tackle. He can't guarantee the ligaments, the bones, the soft tissue of his starting offensive line to be 100% the entire season. Aidan Chiles is very good. He's very talented. He's a great kid. We had him on the show not too long ago. He's not so great that he can go back and change the schedule in October, because as hard as those teams are, they will be physical. They will be demanding on the body. So it's not just going to be hard to win those games. They will be beating up the roster too. So be excited, but be reasonable. All right, guys, that is just the focus that we want to lay out here, is that, yes, this is exciting. And he's coming at the right time too, right? Like, we just had a season last year where we didn't even score 16 points per game. So we just got rid of this, 2002 Chevy Cavalier that had no air conditioning. It was missing some seat belts, and the radio only worked on AM. It was really bad what we just got rid of. But in comes rolling into our driveway a nice Corvette. All right, it's just something nice and exciting to look at. But guys, let's make sure we could drive this thing. Let's make sure that we know how to operate this new fancy piece of machinery that we just got. But yes, I think that Chiles is just coming at a time where anything exciting is just going to rev up this fan base. All right, guys, more about that October gauntlet here in a little bit. But first, need to talk your ears off about FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook, in one of the best times of year to get in on the action. We're talking Stanley Cup playoffs. We're talking eventually, guys, this NBA championship is going to tip off. I know there's a 4-week stretch between games here, but get your wagering done over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It is winner take all in the NBA, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, so much more. Or if you're like me, I'm going to hit one of these times. Correct score of the NHL games. I keep betting the home team to win 4-2. That is yet to happen, but you know what that means? That means I am due. And when I make those bets, I do it over at FanDuel and all my golf betting too. I always got to shout out the golf betting over at FanDuel. Again, guys, new customers, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. It's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, diving headfirst back into the mailbag here. Thomas writes in, given the 4-game gauntlet Michigan State needs to go through this season, I think we can all realistically accept there's a likely reality that we may go 0-4 through that stretch. That being said, how realistically do you believe Michigan State will be capable of at least showing a pulse against Oregon and Ohio State, or making Michigan and Iowa sweat in their seats? What, in your opinion, do the Spartans need to focus on executing the most to do so? So this gauntlet that he's talking about, Ohio State at home, on the road against Oregon, home against Iowa, and then on the road against Michigan. That's that stretch that we have been kind of dreading here right now. The schedule is fine in September and November. Sets up very nice for Michigan State, but yes, this is tough. So will we be able to show a pulse against Oregon and Ohio State? So the Ohio State game is first. All right. I want to just bark out this stat again, just to show people how bad it's been the last few years. If you need any reminder, the average score in the last 4 years against Ohio State has been 36-4. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I forget to mention that's just in the first half? By the way, on average, the last 4 years, when it's Spartans versus Buckeyes at halftime, the average score has been 36-4. These games are over at the coin toss the last 4 years. It has been brutal. So the only way to go is up, potentially. I say that half joking, half serious. I think that it can only get better from here. Now, I did look at Ohio State's schedule. Maybe, hopefully, they're playing a really tough team the week before they come to East Lansing. No, that's not the case. They play Akron, they play Western Michigan, and they play Marshall. I'm sure they tried to get Bath Township High School in there, but they were busy that weekend. So, no, that's going to be a fresh Ohio State team, but it will be their first road game. So we got that to look forward to. But anyway, 6 days after that, on a short schedule, you got to fly cross-country to play Oregon on a Friday night game. As if it isn't hard enough to fly cross-country, which we know how hard it can be for teams to do that. We saw it against Arizona State. We, of course, saw it against Washington a few years ago. Well, how about against a team that's going to be as good as Oregon? Okay, yikes. How about with one less day of prep, one less day of recovery? That's what I'm talking about. When you play Ohio State, you're kind of playing them twice. You're playing them on that Saturday. You actually face them, and you face them again in that week of recovery. That's going to be a really tough game physically, guys. So I'm not so hopeful against Oregon. I'm sorry. I hate to be Debbie Downer immediately. I do not see that game being good. Now, with the Ohio State game, it's at home. That's it's at home. That's pretty much it. Can you keep it closer than 36-4? Just give us something different to look at than the last 4 years potentially. So let's go to those other two games that our guy Thomas was talking about here. Iowa and Michigan. The Iowa game right now on the computers, on paper, you're still a double-digit underdog. Right now I have a hard time believing that's going to be the case once the game shows up. Iowa will have... I know it can't be worse than last year, but it will still not be like the world's greatest offense I can imagine over there. Their defense is still going to be top-notch, guys. It's just going to be the same old Iowa that we all know. Horrific on offense, really, 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 really strong on defense. This game could very well be a race to 20 points. So can Michigan State potentially make Iowa sweat in that game? Absolutely. I think that game will be close to a coin toss come kickoff time. Maybe Iowa's favored by 4, 5 points, which on the road for that Hawkeye team, come to Spartan Stadium. I mean, for a homecoming game too, let's not, discount that. I think that Michigan State can make Iowa sweat in that game. I think that's going to be the most likely win in October, but Michigan too. Now here we go. I could already hear the Michigan fans getting upset because we talked about the Michigan game last week. I said that Michigan State probably has an 8% chance to win that game. And that still got some Michigan fans upset that I would give their team a 92% chance to win a football game. Even after winning a national title last year, they're still a grumpy bunch over there, but here we go. I am worried about Michigan State's run defense in this game. And this is what we talked about last week with Michigan. I mean, they're potentially breaking in a quarterback, Alex Orji, who has played sparingly the last 2 years in Wildcat packages, but still was never trusted to even throw the ball once. He is a purely running quarterback. But then again, does he have to throw the ball against us? I mean, Michigan, guys, for as much as they lost last year, they will still be a really, really good running football team. That could very well be all they have to do to beat Michigan State. So will we make Michigan sweat? Potentially. If the offense can't keep up, make it kind of a shoot around here. Make it a first team to 30 game. You could, but I still think Michigan will be favored heavily in that game, and I still stand by that. I don't think I'm going to give MSU. I'm sorry. This is going to upset State fans. I understand this. I don't want to say it. I don't want to believe what I'm saying. But for right now, in year one, under Jonathan Smith, I still think it's a less than 10% chance MSU wins that game. A lot of season left. We'll see what both rosters look like by the time that game rolls around, but that's just where I'm at. Now, Jack writes in the last question that we're going to get to here. What is more likely for next year? 10-win season in football or 4 seed or higher for March Madness? I'm going to default to basketball here just because of how hard that October stretch is. All right, my prediction right now, I've been pretty solid on this last few weeks, 7-5. Which seems like that's not one that you pop champagne over. You don't have a parade down Grand River for that. I think that would be a really good success, though, in year one under Jonathan Smith. All right. And that's probably because we haven't seen a bowl game in 2 years. That's probably because, FanDuel has the over-under at 4.5 right now. But really, 7-5 in year one of this rebuild would be really strong. But also, it's just those 3 games that we just mentioned, right? Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan. You want to throw the 4th game, Iowa, in there? It'll be really hard to get up to 10 wins with that. But also, too, on the basketball side, we talked about their floor, which I think could be the NIT. We also talked about their ceiling, which could be a top 4 seed in the tournament. I think this year is so volatile for Michigan State basketball. Rarely have we gone into an offseason where it is just this much of an unknown what to expect because there are so many questions like, how is Jeremy Fears doing? How is he off a gunshot to his leg? Not just that, but let's say he was healthy the entire season last year. His jump shot still needed some work. What kind of a player are you going to get out of your starting point guard next year? Jaden Akins, he slides up to the 2. Great. he has to replace Tyson Walker, who was really good at creating his shot, really good at slashing to the lane on his own. Can Jaden Akins make up for that nearly 20-point deficit that Tyson Walker has left behind? Or stepping up to the 3, Frankie Fiddler, guy out of Omaha, I think is a really, really good pickup for Michigan State. Will it translate, though, from where he was playing to Michigan State? The 4 position, how big of a jump can Xavier Booker make? I know he's NBA talent, but is he just going to be an 8-6 guy, or can he average 15 points a game? The 5 position, I don't know. I don't think that anyone's going to make a drastic jump from whether it's Jackson Kohler, Carson Cooper, Zyman Sapala. I don't think anyone's going to be making that drastic of an improvement from the 5 spot last year. But dang it, what if I'm wrong? What if Sohn absolutely shines? What if Jackson Kohler does become a double-digit guy? What if Carson Cooper becomes one of the best front court defenders in the Big Ten? Then yes, if you hit the ceiling of all those things that we just mentioned, that could be a 4 seed. Even if you just hit on 4 of the 5 things we just mentioned, that could be good enough to be a 4 seed. So it's a combination of, man, Michigan State football, their schedule's really tough. And Michigan State basketball, let's say finally things start working out the way we want them to. Yeah, you could see it happening there. All right, guys, we will be back. Next up, we're going to get 1/3 of Can't Read, Can't Write, Kevin Greck on the show coming up next. But guys, until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Love you all.